Long ago, when the heather still grew knee-high across the Cumbrian fells, there lived a poor young swain named Joseph. His parents, once sturdy hill folk, had grown frail and silver-haired. The flock of gray-faced sheep he drove each dawn was all they possessed in the world, handed down from father to son like a weather-smoothed shepherd's crook. Every morning Joseph shouldered his canvas sack and climbed the narrow sheep tracks above the village of Glenridding. The wind tasted of peat and rain. The only music was the bleating of ewes and the far-off cry of a golden eagle. At dusk, he gathered dead rowan branches for the hearth, so his mother could bake the last of their barley bannock and his father warm his rheumatic knees. Supper was often no more than a heel of stale bread and a mug of nettle tea. Yet Joseph never let complaint cross his lips. Before sleep, he would kneel by the peat fire and say, "We may be penniless, but Providence walks these fells beside us. One day, these very sheep will lift us higher than Helvellyn's summit." The squire's sons, sleek in velvet waistcoats, would overhear him and laugh across the market square. "Look at the dream-driving shepherd," they scoffed, as if fleece and hoof could ever buy a coat of arms. "Your sire trod these hills, and so shall you and your children after you, till doomsday." Joseph only smiled, touching the brim of his battered cap. Thrones, he knew, were granted by a higher court than man's. One autumn afternoon, he led his flock to the high quarry where the stone circles stand. There he met an old man in a tattered frieze cloak, leaning on a black thorn staff, eyes the color of winter sky. The stranger's boots were split, and his lips blue with cold. Without hesitation, Joseph unwrapped his own meager fare, an oatcake hard as roof slate, and pressed it into the wanderer's hands. "Sir, I've nothing grander, but every crumb was earned by honest labor. Take it and welcome." The elder ate slowly, crumbs catching in his silver beard. When he finished, he laid a gloved hand on Joseph's shoulder. "Lad, your heart is as open as the fell-top sky. The one who sees in secret has taken the measure of your gift. Generosity is a ladder that reaches farther than you can dream." So saying, he turned and descended the scree, disappearing into the mist that spills over the ridge at Gloaming. Joseph counted his sheep, found every one, and started the long walk home beneath the first pale stars. Next dawn, Joseph climbed the fell again, the old wanderer's words still tolling in his chest. Generosity is a ladder that reaches farther than you can dream. Halfway up the ridge, he heard angry shouting. One of his ewes had strayed through a gap in the dry stone wall and was grazing the squire's winter rye. The land steward, Mr. Blackwood, strode through the crop, boots churning soil. "Whose accursed beast is this?" Joseph ran forward, cap in hand. "Mine, sir. I beg pardon. She'll have done little harm. Let me pay what is owed." Blackwood eyed the thin boy and the frayed jacket held together with baler twine. "Pay? You haven't 2 coins to rub together. This field is meant for fat lambs next spring, not the ribs of a pauper's flock." A knot of villagers gathered, some smirking, some silent. Blackwood raised his ash plant. "Very well. Hand over your best milker, white-spotted ewe I see yonder, or I'll summon the parish board and have you cleared off the common." The ewe he demanded was Joseph's treasury, twice the milk of any other, the difference between physic for his father and empty shelves. Tears blurred the boy's eyes, yet he loosened the hempen halter and laid it in the steward's hand. "If taking her cools your anger, sir, then let her go. I'll quarrel with no man." A hush settled. Even the wind in the rowans seemed to pause. Blackwood snorted, turned on his heel, and drove the ewe away with his stick. Joseph gathered the rest of the flock and started home. At dusk, he entered the stone cottage, crook in hand, 1 sheep short. His mother saw the gap at once. The spotted milker, where is she?" When they heard the tale, his mother wept into her apron. "That steward has a flint for a heart. What harm could one ewe do to a whole field? The Lord will reckon with him." His father stared at the empty corner where the milk pail usually stood. "And what of us, son? That creature paid the rent and bought your mother's salve." Joseph set a hand on the old man's shoulder. "We'll trust him who feeds the ravens. You taught me that." From that day, Joseph's labor doubled. At sunrise, he was on the fells. By noon, he was in Glenridding seeking work, hauling slates, mucking stables, digging ditches. Whatever day labor the quarries or farms could spare. Often he earned only a crust, yet each evening he carried home the best of it and told his parents he had eaten his fill abroad. Late at night, when the peat had sunk to embers, he knelt on the stone floor and pressed his forehead to the cold hearth. "O thou, who clothes the lilies and numbers every sparrow, lighten this load, for the yoke grows heavy." Perhaps the Almighty loved his servant too well to leave him untested. At first light, Joseph rose, but instead of the open fells, he turned west, toward the birch-dark fringe of Rydal Forest. The trees stood closer, the grazing was free, and he could be home by noon to hunt day work in the village. He did not know the decision would twist like an adder in his hand. He loosed the sheep among the bracken and shinned up an old rowan to shake down crimson berries. While he was high in the branches, a moorland wolf, gray as February mist, slipped from the shadows. In heartbeats, 2 ewes lay throat-torn, then a third, until the flock that had been his last prop was only blood on bracken and the echo of fading bleats. Joseph clung to the trunk, helpless, tears scorching his cheeks. When the wolf loped away, he dropped to his knees among the scraps of wool and rent flesh. "O Lord," he sobbed, "our rope was already frayed, and now you cut the last strand. My parents are old and brittle. How shall I keep breath in their bodies?" He walked home, beneath a sky the color of pewter, carrying nothing but his empty staff. When his mother saw the hollow space where the flock should have been, she pressed both hands to her mouth. His father's eyes filled with a dread older than language. "What will become of us?" the old man whispered. "We are left with the sound of our own hearts, and even that is faltering." Joseph knelt, drying his face on his sleeve. "While I have strength, you will not hunger. That is my covenant." He left before the kettle cooled. In the marketplace of Ambleside, he stood among carts of herring and bolts of Welsh flannel, offering the only coin he possessed, willing hands. Presently, he noticed a broad-shouldered merchant in a Flemish cloak, counting barrels of alum. Joseph stepped forward, cap crushed in his fingers. "Master, if you lack a man to lift, haul, or keep tally, I am yours. No task will shame me." The merchant studied the lad, calloused palms, cheeks hollowed by worry, yet eyes that held a steady flame. "No laborer I need," he said, "but my warehouse must be swept and garnished before my wagons arrive from Bruges tomorrow. Dust lies on the sacks like frost, and rats have gnawed the very beams." Joseph bent his knee. "Let me do it, master. I was reared among byres and barns. Broom and shovel are old comrades. You speak like one who has seen better days. Why stoop to this?" "Because my parents' stomachs are empty, and pride is a poor filling." The merchant, Master Aldrich de Witt, led him through a timbered doorway into a cavern reeking of grain spoil and mouse droppings. Joseph rolled up his sleeves, fetched birch brooms, vinegar, and lime wash, and worked without pause till moonlight slanted through the high windows and every flagstone shone like a chapel floor. Aldrich returned, boots ringing on the clean flags. "In 20 years no man has scoured so well. I pay 1 Flemish gilding for such labor. Here are 2, the second for honesty that outshines the first." Joseph pocketed the silver coins, pulse racing. "Sir, your wains will need unloading at dawn. May I stand ready? I can tally as well as lift." "You shall be here when the first cock crows," Aldrich answered, and the bargain was sealed. Joseph bought a loaf of rye, a sliver of ewe milk cheese, and a twist of dried apples from the baker's stall. That night, the cottage smelled of bread for the first time since the sheep were lost. His father broke the loaf, tears spotting the crust. "Son, you have shown that a man may still earn his daily bread when the world has taken everything else. May Providence one day grant you bread without the sweat of sorrow." At cockcrow, Joseph was at the warehouse gates. Ox wagons groaned up the lane, wheels crusted with sea salt from the Bruges road. Aldrich greeted him with a nod. "You are punctual as a church bell. Let us empty these wains before the tide turns." Joseph tightened his belt, rolled back his sleeves, and began shifting bales of Flemish cloth and barrels of alum with the steady rhythm of a man who had carried stones on his back since boyhood. Within the hour, every sack was stacked, every cask aligned, the very air smelling of clean pine shavings instead of dust. Master Aldrich walked the aisles, hands clasped behind his back, eyes narrowing with pleasure. "Former carters dented my casks and left trails of spilt grain like breadcrumbs. You have set my goods in better order than a monastery scriptorium sets its scrolls. Stay, work for me, not for the marketplace." He counted 5 silver guilders into Joseph's palm, more coin than the boy had ever held at once. "Tomorrow you shall keep my counting board. Numbers are dearer than spices. Swear you will not let one grain walk away unseen." Joseph swore by the cross carved on the warehouse beam. That evening, he bought a fat trout, a jug of small beer, and honey cakes still warm from the bake oven. The cottage rang with laughter. His father pressed the surplus coins back into Joseph's hand as though they might multiply by touch. "Guard them, my son. Prosperity is a shy deer. Frighten it, and it bolts." Next morning, Aldrich gathered the clerks and porters beside the brass scales. "Henceforth, this youth is my chief factor. His word is mine. His reckoning, final." Joseph expected to be made a tallyman. He found himself made steward of the whole Ambleside enterprise. Within days, he had traced every leak in the ledger. A dishonest weigher who trimmed the scales. A porter who sold alum by night to rival dyers. A clerk who inked 8 where 3 was due. One by one, he set the faults before Aldrich, and one by one they were mended. Profits, thin as Lenten broth a month earlier, now rose like well-proofed bread. At the quarter-day reckoning, Aldrich poured 300 guilders into a leather purse and pressed it into Joseph's hands. "Take this, and take more. Honesty breeds gold faster than usury ever could." Joseph laid the purse on his parents' oaken table. His mother fell to her knees, reciting the Nunc Dimittis. His father simply wept, counting and recounting the shining pieces as though they might vanish like dew. Seasons turned. Aldrich entrusted Joseph with the spring caravan to Bruges, 20 wagons of English wool, Cumbrian iron, and Lakeland charcoal. Joseph bought cheap, sold dear, and returned with Flemish tapestries so fine that even the abbot of Furness Abbey haggled for a piece. Each journey swelled both master and steward's coffers, and the name Joseph of Glenridding began to travel ahead of him like a herald's cry. In earlier seasons, the Bruges caravans had brought back fleeces half-rotted, iron bars brittle as biscuit, and prices so steep that Aldrich groaned over his ledgers. Now, when Joseph's 20 wains rumbled into the yard, the bales that sprang open flashed with scarlet-dyed broadcloth. The iron rang true as chapel bells, and the pepper sacks exhaled a fragrance rich enough to make a miser weep. Every price was lower than Aldrich had ever dared hope. Joseph spread the reckoning on the counting board. Columns neat as soldiers, totals tallied to the last farthing. Aldrich lifted his eyes, slow as prayer. "You are no longer my servant, you are my miracle. Half of this venture is yours from this day. The partnership is sealed before God and these witnesses." Thus, within 3 winters, the shepherd boy became Joseph of Ambleside, alderman of the guild. Where the peat cottage had leaned against the rain, now stood a stone manor, its windows bright with glass brought from Venice, its chimneys breathing apple wood smoke. Folk who had once laughed at the dream-driving shepherd came to the gate asking bread, none left with empty hands. One raw March noon, a beggar in patched hodden cloak limped across the threshold. "For the love of Christ, a crust," he croaked. Joseph pressed a silver groat into the grimy palm, then looked again. Beneath the matted beard, he saw the florid cheeks and ruthless eyes of Mr. Blackwood, the steward who had seized his noker ewe. Blackwood's knees buckled. He fell on the rushes, weeping. "I took your beast, and the Lord took my all, land, barns, even the coat off my back. Cast me out if you will. I have earned contempt." Joseph lifted him upright, as gently as once he had lifted newborn lambs. "A debt was paid long ago. Take this purse, 10 guilders. Buy 2 milch goats and a plot of moss ground. Let us begin again." Tears streamed down the broken steward's face. He could not speak. "Dear friends, the tale is ended, but its tongue still speaks. True greatness is never the clang of coin, nor the weight of lands. It is the quiet forging of patience, sacrifice, and trust in the invisible. He who keeps his heart free of rancor, and his parents' honor higher than his own head, shall be raised to terraces his enemies will behold with wonder. When trials crowd like winter wolves, remember, every blade of honesty you thrust into the frozen earth will one day break into spring. Cruelty digs its own grave. Kindness builds the bridge a man himself must cross again. Walk on, then, truth for staff, service for cloak, faith for lantern, and the road, however rough, will open like a king's highway beneath your feet.